so welcome back to Republic Polytechnic Student Council's YouTube channel. So today with us, we have a special guest, Miss Yvette from the counselling team from Republic Poly.
Hello.
And today with me, I also have my good friend Kavinash, and today we're
Hello.
going to be talking to you about is counselling the right thing or the right method for everyone?
Alright, yeah. So today we're just covering some topics, maybe surrounding mental health, therapy, counseling, etc. And hopefully by the end of this session, we'll get a professional take, Ms. Yvette's opinions on all this, and you guys will be able to make better decisions for yourself on whether you should seek for medical help in terms of your mental well-being and all that. And yeah, hope you guys have fun and enjoy our session.
So just to kick things off, hi Miss Yvette, what made you choose to counsel students?
So I've been practicing for 5 years now as a registered counsellor. And prior to that, I was teaching for about 10 years. And I taught here in Singapore and abroad. And I think during the tail end of my teaching career, I realized that more and more students that I was teaching, it was very difficult for them to really show up in lessons, and to really learn because they were dealing with all sorts of social emotional issues at home, their own personal issues. And I realized that, counseling would be an area that I could really help students, in their personal and academic goals. And that's why I chose to be a school counselor.
Is it like an increasing trend of young people needing counselling before and during COVID as well as after?
Well, I think that trends-wise, you will see an increasing trend during and after COVID. But the need was always there, honestly. It's just that now, after what we've endured with the 2 years of COVID is still ongoing, and then there are all these other uncertainties that come into play. And uncertainties then gives rise to fresh anxieties. So I think we see a lot of that in our students these days. So I really do think that the trend will just keep increasing, where more people will realize that they do need help, that they could benefit from some mental health support in one way or another. And I really do hope that more people will go
Seek help.
will go for help.
Actually, I got a question. Like, what if a student is very stressed because of their workload, come to you because of that stress? Do their workload get postponed or stopped, or how does it work?
Yeah. Also another good question. Lots of students come to us because of the stress, right? The stress in, again, managing projects and just juggling everything else. Many students work part-time as well. So should a student feel like they're having difficulties meeting deliverables, one of the things that we would encourage them to do is to share the problems that they have with their mentor or their PC, because really it needs to be a conversation that school comes in on, so that school can also have a frank chat with the student to talk about accommodations. And now that the student has identified an issue or maybe several issues, we can all brainstorm together to kind of like see how we can get the student to complete the deliverables, maybe with a time extension, conditional time extension, or if a more suitable thing is for the student to maybe see a doctor and then get a medical letter from the doctor certifying that the student might benefit from extra time, then
There's a medical certificate for mental health also?
So if you go and see a psychologist, right, or the psychiatrist, and they you talk to them about your needs, about the fact that you're having a lot of difficulty functioning in school, and one of the main functions of a student is to complete deliverables on time, right? So because of the academic rigor, and it has to be at a certain standard, right? So in order to meet those standards, we can kind of like accommodate in different ways. And again, like I mentioned, this is a conversation that the student would have with school, and before anything that is confirmed, parents might also kind of like be informed. The next of kin would be informed because we definitely do want to create a holistic support system for the student. So that's something that I feel students, if they have any issues, come talk to the counselors or talk to the mentor, their PCs, and then we can see how to move forward.
I think at this point I have to make a very important disclaimer. Please do not lie about your mental health just to get extensions, guys. Okay? It's a very serious topic. So since we're on the topic of students, right? I'm pretty sure that you were a student in one point of your life. So how stressful was student life for you?
Oh my gosh, I'm so thankful that time has passed. It was very stressful when I was a student. Maybe not the same level of stress. I think students these days, it's a whole different ball game, because during my time there wasn't such things as like social media. So we didn't have IG and TikTok and whatnot, where it was so easy comparing ourselves to other people, right? It was stressful, but I think there wasn't that added layer of that cyber wellness layer that I had to concern myself with.
Actually, I mean, social media kind of really shapes the way people think.
Correct.
And I think that's a fact actually.
Because
And
on outside, you want people to seem that you have a very good outside life, so people tend to like want to stress to uphold that image.
Yeah, it's expectations versus reality.
Yes, correct, exactly that. So and I also know a lot of friends that actually they make use of social media as their form of therapy. Like, okay, in for me personally, and for other people that I know, we tend to talk to a close one about certain issues that we have, and so on and so forth. But I also do know that there are a fair pool of people that take on their stresses on social media, where probably maybe 400, 500, 600 people that you don't know very well can actually see your own personal struggles and all that. And what do you think about that? Do you think that that's a healthy way of addressing an issue you might have?
I think that's a really tough question, right? Because like I mentioned earlier, different things work for different people. Everybody has, their own set of needs, what they value, so on and so forth. My personal opinion is that that social media is not therapy, because it's very difficult to engage in therapy with a faceless void.
Yes.
Right? So journaling in itself is, I wouldn't say therapy too. So even if you're saying, I'm using the ether to kind of like send my journalistic thoughts into the world, kind of a thing, but you never know who on the other side of the world is reading your struggles, and having their own assumptions about it, their own kind of making meaning out of that.
Correct.
I think too, a lot of times we need to be quite careful about what we post. It's one thing to post something that's about yourself, and it's another thing to post about sensitive topics that you don't really have a lot of information on, or you're misinformed about, right? And I think that these days celebrities too, they share about their mental health struggles and whatnot, and it's great because it allows people to see them as real people. So so maybe that helps to increase help-seeking behaviors, but it's always the point I see where celebrities say, go and seek professional help, because they know that the online sphere, like social media, I'm not talking about tele, like tele counseling, because that is a proper counseling tool, but more of like just mental health, TikTok videos, people who may have shady kind of like dubious credentials are giving a lot of advice and recommendations. And I myself, when I watch these things, sometimes I'm amazed at the misinformation, the fact that these are either not well researched, or they are telling other people how to deal with something when maybe that might not work as well for a general population, because again, therapeutic approaches are quite specific to different people with different needs. So I'll be careful about that.
Yeah, because if you post this kind of video, right, it also gets a lot of views. So it in
correct.
itself benefits them, when you talk about a controversial topic like mental health.
Like like recently I've been seeing a lot of these TikToks. They make like these videos like top 3 psychologists say that if your name has a K in it, then you're very intelligent or something like that. It's just like out of nowhere.
Just doing it for views lah. Sometimes it's not
And
really
I think the sad part is that many people actually look at this as a serious thing, and they get themselves very affected by this kind of stuff. I mean, I think even like people who are very focused on horoscope, I think they also tend to easily believe certain things on TikTok. Like for example, I'm an Aries, and TikTok says that Aries tend to have anger issues or something like that. So
do you?
That's a topic for another day. But I mean, do I actually confront my anger issues, or do I just let it slide, saying that okay, I'm an Aries, it's normal, So I think like what you said, the misinformation on social media is actually very serious.
Yeah.
And people should be very much more well informed of what they're absorbing from there.
Right.
Yeah. So so coming back to your student life part of things. So what about for yourself? Have you ever seek for counseling or therapy on your own?
Yeah. When I was in uni, I went to see the counselor. I suppose, I was really stressed out. I can't really remember if it was year 2 or year 3. So I did a 4-year honors program. And then I spoke to a counselor, because just one day I just felt like I couldn't take it anymore. I was crying all the time. I wasn't behaving like me. And I think instinctively you kind of know, like once you stop behaving like yourself, then you know that okay, this is something that needs to be sorted, right? So I'm really thankful that my friends, my uni friends, were very supportive. Someone had gone to see the counselor, I think a month before or something, and she was able to refer me to the counselor. I spoke with the counselor, and and I think it was several sessions in, worked with the counselor, identified certain issues that were, I think, making me feel very anxious, very, very stressed out, and worked on skills, on building my skills to kind of help me start to feel more like myself again.
There's this misconception out there, I don't know how true it is, that when people share information during counseling, is it actually confidential, or does it get shared?
Okay, so let me clear that up as well. In the RP context, right? When an RP student comes to one of the school counselors, everything is private and confidential, right? But just as how in the external counseling world, in psychotherapy itself, if you go and see any external therapist, there are always limits to confidentiality, and those limits are more of like harm to self or harm to others. So if there's ever a time where we feel very, very strongly that the student is, the student's safety might be compromised, or the people around the students might be compromised in terms of their safety, we have an ethical obligation as part of our duty of care to inform their next of kin, so that there's again home support and possibly even school. But I want to say this as to kind of reassure that the student, before we say anything, students will be informed that, as a counselor, I feel like this is a concern, let's talk it out. And then let's see how we can involve the student to be the one to tell their parents. So very much we don't come from a place of like authority where, I'm going to call your parents kind of a thing. I think that's more primary and secondary, where maybe counseling is more conservative. But here we recognize that our students are young adults, and so we definitely want to be able to work with them because they are in charge of their own lives, right? So we really just want to work with our students to ensure that whatever it is that we do is not to add more harm or more stress or more whatever, but it's really to come from a place of care and support for the student.
Actually, right, I have this is one thing I need to clarify. Because I think like throughout just not only this podcast, but also outside, I think people actually use the word counseling and therapy interchangeably. What exactly is the difference between them?
Okay, so counseling is usually a lot of talk therapy, right? So talk therapy meaning we're basically talking about issues, identifying issues, and then using different kinds of therapeutic approaches to resolve them, to find a way to solve the issues, right? Sometimes they do get solved, sometimes they don't. Sometimes it's more of the person coming to a realization that it can't be changed, right? Sometimes things are some of the issues are more systemic, coming from family or whatever, or circumstances. So acceptance then. How do we move to acceptance? Therapy and counseling. I think therapy can be quite broadly used for counseling too, but therapy, I would imagine, includes other approaches, right? That maybe like does not include so much talking, like art therapy, for example. So this year we've done a Nagomi art workshop with an art therapist, with a certified art therapist, and the entire workshop was just us, using soft pastels and using color and just kind of expressing what we wanted to express, and how. And I think we didn't have a lot of time to go through all the individual art pieces, but then that's a whole kind of like other therapeutic approach that might work better for other people, so I think different, and then there are also other things like occupational therapy that talks about like activities wise and helping people to engage in specific functional activities for day-to-day and whatnot. So so counseling is a type of therapy, but I think therapy is more of like the umbrella term.
Which one is the one that like they give you pills on?
Okay, so if you're talking about medication, right, it's not a kind of therapy per se, but medication is used in combination with other therapeutic approaches to bring about change, to bring about a positive change, to help the client. So sometimes some clients, their presenting issues or the problems that they face are very, very great. And just going into counseling or talk therapy or whatever other kinds of therapy, it may not be accessible for them because there's like a barrier. So in those cases, a psychiatrist with a hospital, or or could be a private psychiatrist as well, can then look at this patient and decide if medication might help this patient kind of be able to access therapy a lot better. Yeah, so it's usually together.
So in cases like this, it is not really just a mindset, but it might be like a biological wall that can cause people to.
Yeah, I mean, again, there are many reasons why people develop mental health conditions. And biology, your genetic makeup is one of them. So there are also psychological factors, there's social factors involved. So really, many things go into why why we feel the way we feel, why we think the way we do, why we behave, why the way that we do as well. Yeah.
Wait, you can be more biologically like prone to mental illness?
Yes, for certain kinds of
that's
mental
interesting.
illnesses, especially if there has been a family history of that. So when you go for therapy sessions externally, like for example, if you decide like, oh, I want to go and make an appointment with NUH or IMH or whichever, or any other of the hospitals. The first session is usually an intake session, which means that they gather a lot of information about your background. And the reason why they do that is if you, whatever presenting issues that you have, they are able to kind of like see if, oh, could this be like a genetic kind of predisposition? And then they can kind of like make their case formulations from there.
That's very interesting.
Yeah,
I know like biology.
Yeah,
but-
so it's really holistic, these
Correct.
these assessment and intake forms. Yeah.
So that means like a lot of people who speak to their friends about certain issues that they may have, or family members and all that, they might not exactly be receiving the ideal type of help that they need, because it may be much more complex or chronic than they think it is.
Yeah, so I think that's one form of help, right? It's always great if you have a strong network of friends and family who are able to provide you like emotional support. And that's great. That's a great place to start. But it's also important as well to be able to speak to a counselor, a therapist, or a social worker, someone who is trained to really look at the issues that you're reflecting to them in session, and pointing out certain patterns maybe that you might not have been aware of. We're all creatures of habit, right? So sometimes you don't see yourself being conditioned to think in a way until someone actually points out like, oh, like I noticed that this is kind of like a recurring pattern in your life, and then you go, yeah, like I didn't even realize that. So it's having somebody point these things out and not exactly agreeing with you all the time. I think it's a myth that counselors agree with their clients all the time. It's not that. We are active listeners to our clients' problems, to how they feel, the challenges that they're facing. But we're all there to not only want to support them, but we want to help them get better. And that usually involves, some effort on the client's part or the student's part to change certain routines, certain things that maybe are self-sabotaging behaviors, to maybe agree to practice different kinds of skill sets or to bring something into their routine so that they can start changing the way or changing the way that they've been thinking. They are more aware now and they can go like, oh, this is self-sabotaging. I'm going to reframe my thoughts and I think it's more helpful if I think this way because in the long run it's not going to hurt myself or other people around me, kind of a thing.
How effectively do people respond to counseling or therapy in general?
I think that it depends on why they went for counseling in the first place.
Okay.
So people who go willingly, who are motivated to come for counseling on a regular basis, tend to do better, obviously, because if you're already motivated to want to make a change,
The right mindset.
then you kind of like, you're approaching counseling with the right mindset. There are obviously students who come for counseling because they just want to vent, right? Then in those cases, that's fine too, because that's what they want. But I would be quite clear to help them realize that venting may be able to help them feel better in the moment, but does it really change anything in the long term, right? So, and then there are some people who are just ambivalent about counseling, meaning that they were persuaded by somebody to come, but they didn't really want to, maybe because they had a negative experience before, or maybe they're not so sure if this is something that they're comfortable with. They're not there yet. They're at the pre-contemplative state of change, right? Then if that's something that I'm able to suss out during a session, and that's quite obvious really, then I might just kind of like reflect that to the student and say, like, is this something that you are comfortable continuing this counseling session? Sometimes students too, they need to find the right fit. So that's why we've got different counselors who are available to work with different students and different needs. But many of our counselors, we are all trained with several therapeutic approaches, so that we are able to kind of manage with most students. And then if, let's just say, a student requires additional support, then we will make the necessary referral, but still support the student, but we'll also make the necessary referrals to external professionals, just to complement the care treatment.
Like, have you ever encountered or other issues where like counseling or therapy is really not the thing for them? Then in those cases, like, what can be done?
I mean, I have not personally, but I would imagine that if, let's just say, a student really, really felt very uncomfortable, there might be alternative approaches, right, to feeling better. So again, going back to the basics, do you have your sleep in order, your nutrition, your exercise, your, are you socially engaged with friends? Are there other things other than, if let's just say you're not comfortable talking about this particular issue, do you want to focus on something else that you feel you could build, like in terms of your skill set, right? So I think not making it too overwhelming for a student as well, because I think people come in to therapy or counseling thinking that, oh, I just need to fix everything. But then many times they'll be like, but how do I start? Where do I go? What do I fix? And then there are all these question marks. And I think we can take it one step at a time. Sometimes it's as simple as maybe role playing. Like, for example, if a student is feeling very, very anxious about the upcoming presentation, right? I might engage them in a role play in session and go, okay, imagine I'm the lecturer, or I am a teammate, or I'm whoever, and then I'm going to kind of riff off you, and then you respond, and then I'll coach them in this way. So it doesn't always have to be a counseling session. Sometimes it's also a little bit of coaching. Sometimes it's a little bit of just a way to help students engage in skills that they already knew, but they needed a little help remembering that, oh yes, I do have these skills and I can engage them more to help me feel better during these types of situations.
I see. With all these activities that counselors and therapists can suggest, I think the individual also does have a big part to play, as in how far they want to go to help themselves.
Yeah.
And I mean, that also, I think, involves choosing the right circle of friends, engaging in the right type of activities, and so on and so forth. So, speaking of activities, right, I'm pretty sure you're aware that many people actually tend to indulge in not the best sort of activities to cope with stress. Maybe some negative ones like
Substance abuse, they smoke, and like extreme cases, they would do like self-harm on themselves.
Yeah. I mean, I think we would call these unhealthy coping mechanisms because especially if they're done for a long period of time, and the main reason why you would clients or students choose these coping mechanisms or strategies is because it's easy, it's maybe fun, it numbs the feelings, and you can kind of like run away or avoid, feeling uncomfortable. So we do see a lot of students trying their best to cope. I'm not saying that they're not trying, even if they are doing these things. They're trying their best in whatever ways possible to cope however they know how to. And that's where we come in, right?
Yeah.
If a student comes in for a counseling session, we get to identify certain issues, we get to work out what they're doing right now that's helping them cope. We get to kind of like talk about, is this a healthy or maybe not so healthy coping strategy or mechanism? And then we talk about what other strengths, other skill sets they have that might be able to be a better alternative for them, right? So anything that that helps to balance. I'm not saying not have fun with your friends, right? But a drink or two over the weekend with a couple of your lads or your friends is very different from binge drinking alone at 4 a.m. because you're feeling sad. So I think it's also, I think we're looking at the circumstances of why you do what you do, and so having students really identify this for themselves is a very powerful way of saying that you can choose to change certain behaviors. Will that be uncomfortable? Yes, but will that bring about positive change in the future? Usually that's the case. Once you cut out a self-sabotaging behavior, you realize that, like, hey, actually once I go through, I'm able to process this difficult emotion, with alternative skills, things do get better.
So when people perhaps comes to a counselor and says that they're struggling with maybe like a nicotine addiction or alcohol addiction, what are the types of suggestions that a counselor would tend to give them?
Okay, so addiction in itself, for me, because every counselor works differently as well. So for me, I would really go into understanding and having the student or client understand for themselves as well why it's important for them to make this change. Because again, many students, they know cognitively that it's not great for them, but I think being able to put in consistent effort to change, that's oftentimes the hardest part, because it's so tempting, right? It's to take the easy way out or to avoid and just like, I'll just deal with it tomorrow. So really, the empowering thing about counseling is that the student gets to make the realization for themselves why it's important for them to change, because it's going to very often improve their quality of life. And I think that that's something that they, through the hardest times, that's something that they will need to be able to dig out for themselves and go, this is the reason why I'm making the change. You know, this is the goal that I want to improve my quality of life in, you know, this way or that. And then they can kind of like make the most informed decision of how they choose to behave. Yeah.
Alright, so I mean, yeah, it still boils back to the point that you have to put in a lot of effort to help yourself and do the right thing for yourself, your mind, for your body.
Yeah, and I mean, the right thing can mean very different things,
Yeah,
right?
correct.
So with the counselor's help, as a counselor, my job is not to pass judgment on what you're doing or to say that this is right and this is wrong. I think it's more to help the student or my client understand why they're doing what they're doing, right, is not helping, and what we can do to help improve their situation. Yeah, and that's what people really want, right? People want to improve the way that they're living, the way that they feel about themselves, the way that they connect with themselves or other people. It's just how do they get from what's often they feel rock bottom or kind of like in a tricky situation to like where they envision themselves in terms of the quality of life. It feels very overwhelming, but that's why I mentioned the baby steps, right? So as counselors, we help them see what those baby steps are so that we normalize the struggle. Because it is going to be a struggle, no doubt about that. But once they realize that it's normal for everyone to struggle, because in that struggle you're going to build, you know, really a really strong resilience. You're going to build skills that you never even knew you had. Many people didn't realize until they look past you know, months ago and they see their progress and they're like, wow, I didn't even know, you know, I've come this far, kind of a thing. And you often don't really see that because we are our harshest critics, you know, especially in Singapore. I think we are very hard on ourselves. We expect a lot, right? So that's something that it's my job to affirm, you know, every achievement that my clients or my students have, and to help to motivate them whenever their motivation dips or wanes. Yeah.
Are there like any baby steps like people can take generically?
I think it goes back to the routine. Like I mentioned, we are creatures of habit. So I know I myself, in my routine, right, I love like the last couple of like half an hour, an hour, I might sneak in before bedtime, like a K-drama or something. And then one drama, you know, one episode turns into 2, turns into 3, and you're like, oh my gosh, it's like 1 a.m. and I'm not asleep yet. So, so just making tweaks, right? I've realized we tend to see the changes as in I have to make like a drastic change before anything can be better. And I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think that the best baby steps are baby changes, right? That you can tweak naturally in your routine itself. For example, maybe sleep, right? A lot of people downplay how important sleep is, and I get it, like, you know, and you've got youth on your side but I really feel it now in my late 30s. And yeah, and so I was a student before, you know, I pulled like all-nighters and then I had energy to like go to class the next day, and I think about that now and I cringe and I'm like, no. Yeah, and usually these days I'm asleep by like 10, you know, kind of a thing. So so I think tweaking that part, right? If you can get an extra hour of sleep, do that, and you will really feel refreshed, right? So sleep is good. Put your phones away, you know, scroll through social media, in the daytime, on your commute or whatever, if that's a better time for you. Things like nutrition, right? Don't eat things that are maybe not the most nutritious. If you can, try and have proper meals, hydrate. If you can, go for a walk. Just these, again, basics, going down to the basics. Where are things that you can tweak so that you can add a little bit more self-care? If self-care for you is maybe an additional 5 minutes in the shower, you want to just like wash all of the stress away, why not, right? Treat yourself. If self-care to you is like a waffle and an ice cream, once a week, why not? Like, treat yourself. I think that it's important to build these little breaks, these little rewards into your day-to-day, and just tweaking what is already there.
Last week he messaged me at like 11 at night saying, I just woke up. I was like, what?
You probably really needed that nap.
Slept for like
I think it was 20 something hours.
Oh my gosh.
just knocked out after holidays began.
I think that's very true. We really neglect things like sleep, hydration. I mean, even this bottle of water, I think it's the first bottle of water I've been having like the past 3 weeks already. So So I think these little things throughout the day, right, like drinking water, eating healthy, like exercise that you mentioned, they actually go a long way. And it's things that we tend to neglect as well. We think that, okay, how is drinking water going to help me mentally? But the truth is it does, especially if you're consistent, disciplined about it.
Yeah.
So I think more people should pay attention to such little things.
Simple things.
Yeah. All right. So we've spoken about counseling, the benefits of it, some challenges that people may face, and so on and so forth. But I think one factor that many people have spoken about online and as well as within the school as well is for those that want to seek therapy or counseling outside, I think finance might be quite a big of a question for them. So is there like some system out there by maybe the government or by hospitals or agencies that help to provide some form of financial aid for those that are trying to seek for mental health?
Yeah, I mean, that's an excellent and very relevant question. So there are a lot of family service centers around, all in Singapore, like FSC. So if you're walking around your neighborhood, you see like the signs, family service center. You can actually go there and seek counseling there, right? From their social workers, their counselors. That's one avenue. Another thing is if, let's just say, you wish to, for a student, some students, they might not be comfortable seeking counseling in school, and I will respect that. So one of the things too that we would recommend for the student to do is to then go to a polyclinic, see the doctor there, the GP, and then get a referral to see a psychiatrist at a hospital. So this way they receive subsidized rates seeing the psychiatrist. That route takes a little bit longer though, because again, it takes about anywhere from a month to 3 months to get an appointment, to secure an appointment with a psychiatrist or a psychologist. Other places, and these are more of like community-based agencies. We've got Care Corner that's located in Woodlands, and they are an external partner that we've engaged before to do workshops to talk about these things, and they will also be doing a workshop for us for self-compassion during the October mental health month. So Care Corner, I think a lot of students know Limitless as well. Limitless, they train our peer support leaders too this year. So Limitless is also a great place to start. There's also other places like SOS, Fei Yue, Silver Ribbon, they all offer some sort of subsidized rates for counseling. So many of these community agencies or social services, they tend to offer their counseling fees in a sliding scale. So a sliding scale just basically means a certain percentage of whatever it is that you can afford. So and if you earn like under 3,000 or something like that, then it's capped at a certain amount. So you're not going to be paying like hundreds of dollars, even if you want to go and seek external help or support.
It's like going back to friends, right? Sometimes when friends comes to us about their problems, is there anything else we can do besides just listening? Like what do we say?
Yeah, so so supporting your peers doesn't have to be super overwhelming. I think listening first is very important. Just really not trying to pass judgment or not trying to offer solutions too quickly. Sometimes friends reach out to us because they want to be validated. And so during those cases, might just be best to listen, you know, and if you need to, you know, ask some questions that will allow you to get a little bit more information so that you understand a greater context behind what's happening, and you're not just saying like, oh, like this happened to me before, you know, or oh, I went through this before and I did this and it was fine. I think not making it about you, but really focusing your attention on your friend during that time of their need really helps. And again, don't feel stressed about having to solve anything. You know, have your friends seek help, right? So sometimes friends will refer their friends to counseling or to their mentors and just be like the moral support kind of a thing. I've also had students who have decided to come for counseling and brought their best friends just so that they have somebody there who they trust, who they can rely on. And I'm fine with that too. And I think that's also something, if you have a friend who's worried about coming for counseling, who's undecided, but really does want to try taking a step to resolving certain issues, ask your friend if he or she would like for you to, you know, support them by going with them, you know, if it helps to make things better. And I think that always asking somebody like, what can I do to help, right? And giving the person that you're trying to help a sense of control of how they would like you to help them, how they would like to receive help is always good too.
All right.
There's this like I think a lot of people also have this question, like when you go to seek therapy or counseling, whether in school or outside of school, is there a record that follows you?
Okay, so it's not the record that that I think many students think it is, like, oh, I've got this thing and then I won't be able to be employed by, you know, everybody will know that I spoke to a counselor. It's not. I do keep records of the students that I have counseled, but that is locked and sealed, and only us counselors have the sort of like the
Access.
password, the access to these records, and they are really just a form of record keeping, but it does not follow the student to other institutions and whatnot. It's not like if you go to uni, they're gonna dig up all of these records. No, yeah, it doesn't work that way.
What about in the outside context, when you seek counseling outside of school? Is there a record that follows them too, or?
I think so. If you're talking in terms of like, does it go into your health record? So there is some sort of record, but again, it's not going to be the kind of record that companies can just go like, oh, I'm going to dig up everything
so they
because
won't be
your
able to-
medical records, in case you didn't know, all right, and this is PSA for everybody, right? Your medical records are private and confidential, which means that nobody has the right to access your records without your permission.
Alright.
So if ever your records are going to be accessed, you will have to give them consent. Yeah. So it boils down to consent, and you will have consent to give permission for anybody, any institution, any company that's going to request for your records.
That's very
So we shouldn't let like this fear actually prevent you from.
I think this is a very big fear that parents have.
Yeah, correct.
Right? Like, oh, you don't want a record
Yeah.
like following you, and I think this is a very big misconception, right? And it's really one of the things that creates an unnecessary barrier and fear around counseling. So I really hope that with this clears up the fact that there is a record, but then there are records everywhere, because again, our cyber trails, there is going to be a record of you and everything that you've texted, everything that you've posted, everything, right? So I think that in itself is we shouldn't allow that to take away your right to counseling, right? Because again, you can give the permission, so you control your medical records.
So like, let's say if you were to apply for a job at a company, right? Are you obligated to answer the questions if they ask you about mental health? And if you indicate that you have some sort of mental illness, are they allowed to not hire you?
I think that there's definitely some sort of discrimination act, right? So really, I can't kind of like generalize, because again, there are other careers that may require a psych evaluation for the individual, right? If you're going to hold very high levels in the government where you have a lot of power to
Impact a lot of
to exert change or control or something, you want to kind of know that this person is stable, is doing well, is okay, right? So maybe in circumstances like that, they might request, if you're going to be working in like the government, for example, where you're going to hold like a very high level post, maybe, right, they might request for your records. But again, I think that there's a tolerance, right? There is a tolerance, and there's and there is a shifting mindset to accept people who've had rough patches before, and there's no reason again why you can't have had a rough patch, gotten better, and learn things about yourself. So it's only going to show how strong you are, right? So again, I wouldn't let that stop anybody from going for counseling. Yeah.
All right. So I think we've covered a lot of important points today so far, right? Is there anything else that you would like to address, that as a counselor, that concerns that you might have that you want to address in this podcast?
Any misconceptions out there that you want to clarify?
I mean, I think that we've addressed a lot, right? But one of the things that I hope today, me being here today, addressing misconceptions, clearing the air about any of these myths, is that I really do want to promote awareness of what counseling can do to benefit an individual if they feel like counseling is a good fit for them. I definitely hope that what we've shared today helps students make that decision for themselves. And I really hope that it decreases the stigma that people have against help seeking, right? So if even somebody who's listening, who's struggling, and maybe feels like, oh, should I or should I not? If we've helped that student make a decision to come and reach out for support, I think we've done really well today.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
How do a student take the first step?
So there are several ways. You can either walk in and make an appointment with us. We are located at W1L1. Those glass doors. You just come into the Student Care Centre and we'll attend to you. We'll probably make an appointment for you. You can also email us help-counselor with 1L at rp.edu.sg. You can call us or WhatsApp us 97704357. You can also make a booking online to come and see and talk to a counsellor.
Okay, so I think we're going to wrap it up here. A big thanks to Miss Yvette and Office of Student Support. And yeah, thank you for watching.
Thank you for having me.
We hope you enjoyed this episode.
Bye-bye.
Bye.